Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome to our Top Potato webinar, Can the Right Nutrition Help Suppress Tuber Disorders? My name is Eva Ross, Marketing and PR Manager for Yara UK and Ireland, and I'm delighted to be joined by my two colleagues, Mark Tucker, Head of Business Development and Agronomy, and our Area Manager, Tom Decamp, specialising in potatoes. Now, let's hear from Mark and Tom as to whether the right nutrition can help suppress tuber disorders. So, Mark, I'll hand over to you to take it from here.
Great, thanks, Eva. Yes, we've got the next few minutes sort of going through this. So we'll have myself just start with just a bit of background and brief comment on aspects of quality and the nutrients that are associated with that, and a little bit more of the technicality. And then I'm going to hand over to Tom Decamp, who many of you I'm sure will know, and he'll just run through in a bit more detail around specifics on that, how to manage those nutrients, especially thinking calcium there and tuber quality. So just if we start then and think about it, there's been a very good review fairly recently which really does summarize some of the key aspects that we're thinking about, and a nice diagram that's put up there from that review just highlights some of the quality traits, because when we talk about tuber quality, then it means different things to different people at times, because it can be just a quality associated with dry matter or starch content, reducing sugars, but it can also then be quality by way of skin finish or internal condition of the tuber. The Maillard reaction, which is highlighted up there, becomes more prevalent in terms of thinking about acrylamides. So yeah, tuber quality can be sort of many things, but there's one thing that I think does come through, and that the various nutrients that can actually have an impact all of those quality aspects, and you can see highlighted on there some that really do stand out in terms of having that positive effect: calcium, potassium, magnesium. And I'm sure many of you would have picked up on that over the years, that they really are critical when it comes to the quality of the tuber. It shouldn't be forgotten as well that we can have negative impacts with nutrient management, and particularly nitrogen. So if we get that timing of that nitrogen wrong, or we have excess nitrogen in the system, then that can have obviously a negative effect on tuber quality. And there specifically we can think of how it can actually lead to a higher level of acrylamide if we really do get it wrong. So that's something that I'm sure will become more and more part of discussions. So yeah, the three that stand out: calcium, potassium, magnesium. But if we think in terms of what are the common issues that are linked, or what common issues link through to many of those disorders that were just described, in terms of particularly skin finish, internal bruising, internal browning, cracking, brown center, hollow heart, all disorders that have been highlighted, and when it comes to tuber quality. And what is it that sort of links and is a common thread through all of those? Well, that's fairly straightforward, and that's having a very good cell wall and membrane associated in that tuber. And that's the thing, I think, that is what links all of them. And there's just a diagram there where, when we're talking about the cell wall, it is the cell wall being almost the skeleton of the plant cell. They're unique to plant cells, having that. And then you have the cell membrane just on the inner side of that cell wall. And really that cell membrane and cell wall are keeping the rigidity of the tuber and the plant, and also then allowing either water or nutrients or products of the various reactions that are going on within the cell to come in and out of that cell and then be moved around the plant. So really important that we think about how we create a really good quality cell wall and cell membrane. The other side of that we see when it comes to tuber quality, as well as that cell wall, is actually then the cell turgor pressure. That's another or the hydration of the cell. That's another real sort of common theme running through achieving high potato quality. So if we get potatoes that are well hydrated, again not hydrated in excess but well hydrated, then they are less prone to damage. And I'm thinking there the damage that's been cited in literature when it comes to the starch grains. When you've got poor hydrated cells, then that starch grain can act and damage the cell walls, and that's when you can start problems of quality coming in. And again, well hydrated potatoes have been associated with lower levels of black spot. Of course, one of the key nutrients of that is potassium, that we'll come on to in just a minute. But if we overhydrate potatoes, then of course that can be damaging as well. We end up reducing specific gravity and low dry matter. But also we can lead to growth cracks if we're not careful. So yeah, hydration of the cell, another really important aspect of maintaining tuber quality. If we look back now at that, the comments around the cell wall, then it's a very complex structure, and the diagram there just highlights that you've got various layers of pectins and the middle lamella cited there, all very complex structures that make up that cell wall. And that's really the starting point with where some of these nutrients play roles. So calcium, it's an intrinsically involved in pectin formation during that cell wall development. So that is what then really gives the rigidity of the cell, stops it rupturing, and keeps its sort of plastic nature. Sometimes it's described as this sort of egg box type of structure where you've got the calcium linking the various pectins to maintain that structure. The other nutrient that I didn't mention earlier on, but because it's associated with calcium, it's worth a mention now, and there's still quite a bit to be learned about it in terms of where its role sits. But 90% of the boron sits in the cell wall structure of the tubers, and the potatoes. So it clearly is important. Knowing exactly where the importance is a bit of an issue. That's still work to be done on that, but it is associated with, again, pectin development, pectin binding of the primary cell wall, and then that other layer that's there, the middle lamella. So there's a real important element, and we know from boron deficiency symptoms that it shows by way of sort of degraded cells and blackening of cells, so clearly has an important role to play. And then lastly there, potassium on the screen, really it's the osmotic ion, as we would term it. So it's management in water coming in and out of the cell, really where it stands out in all plants, but particularly obviously when it comes to maintaining tuber pressure within the cell. We need a healthy level of potassium so that that cell maintains its structure, its turgidity, and then that's less prone to mechanical damage. So yeah, some real sort of key aspects there associated with those three nutrients, but cell wall structure being really fundamental. I'm going to hand over to Tom now, having just highlighted those nutrients, just to see how we might go about managing them in the most efficient way. So hopefully you're there, someone you can pick up on the story.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, well, I think we're all guilty as agronomists, farmers and growers of thinking NPK, and rightly so, we should get that right. But some of these so-called secondary nutrients, or so-called secondary nutrients, like calcium in particular, are absolutely essential for good, healthy growth of the potato crop. And I'd just like to drill down a little bit further into the role of calcium on the potato crop. Now, we've been using for a number of years now the product calcium nitrate Tropicoat, which is a granular form of calcium nitrate on potatoes and other crops as well. And why do we use that? Well, the first thing you have to realize is that calcium's not particularly mobile within the crop. It won't move, translocate downwards through the crop. So foliar calciums, yes, you will get some calcium into the leaf, but it will not move down through and into the tuber where it's really needed. So some of these foliars, yes, they'll hold calcium in that foliage. And yes, you may not divert calcium out of the tubers to enrich those leaves. But if you've not got a good basal level of calcium in the tubers, then that's not going to work anyway. So some of the things that calcium deficiency will affect in the crop. Well, you're going to help with suppressing internal issues such as internal rust spot, internal browning. And essentially what it is, when you get a rapid growth spurt, if those individual cell walls within the tuber are not strong enough and rich with calcium, then as they get rapid expansion, they simply burst, and then this exhibits itself as a necrosis or a browning internally. But also helps with skin finish. We've done quite a bit of trials work, both farm trials and replicated trials work on improvements on skin finish by getting calcium levels right. Calcium also helps alleviate stress, particularly heat stress, wilting, a prolonged dry period. Then calcium can very much help with that. And of course, it's all in nitrate nitrogen form, which is a lot kinder to the crop. It's also instantly available, and we apply it as one simple application of 400 kgs per hectare tube initiation to the crop in a split nitrogen program. This is just some illustrations of the sort of deficiency disorders that we'll see. As you can see on the top two there, internal issues, so that browning, cracking, internal browning, internal rust spot. We're trying to achieve, when you slice that tuber in half, we're trying to achieve that nice, clean, shiny sheen inside, and also a good skin finish as well. In the bottom there, you can see bruising. Some of the tests we've done, some of the trials we've done on bruising. I mean, that's a lot to do with handling and a lot of other issues, water management. But we've also found benefits in terms of bruising, whereby we think the calcium has actually strengthened that outer cuticle. So when they're bouncing around on machinery or in store being handled, then this helps reduce individual bruising of the tubers. And the other thing that we found is soft rots in store benefits when the crop goes into store, having it enriched with calcium helps combat these particularly Erwinia soft rot and soft rots in store. So the first thing we have to realise, one of the other things we have to realise is that it's worth remembering that the potato crop actually needs calcium. It needs about 50 kgs of calcium per hectare. And when we get this opportunity to apply it at tuber initiation, it's critical that we get it on them because of this problem with mobility within the plant itself. This is a trial we did some time ago now, but it's a proper replicated trial. It was done on the black land down in the fens in Cambridgeshire. A simple trial that involved ammonium nitrate control, applying nitrogen in the form of ammonium nitrate, and running alongside that, applying calcium nitrate at same timings, but applying the nitrogen in the form of calcium nitrate. And you can see there it's quite dramatic, the reductions in incidence of silver scurf, black scurf, and also we saw benefits on scab as well. I'll come on to scab a bit later, but generally it can really help skin finish on a potato crop. It's not an exact science, and a lot of people are still doing a lot of work on as to why this actually happens, but we think that once again, getting this strong calcium enriched outer cuticle allows less of these disorders to affect the skins of potatoes. Another misconception really about the use of calcium and which product to use. Quite a few people say, well, we lime, we put plenty of lime on, or the pH is right. Well, I know you don't want lime for potatoes, but in the previous year you might have lime for something. Well, most lime products are in the form of calcium carbonate, which is relatively insoluble. So you're not actually going to get a lot of available calcium for the crop by applying liming products. And even the gypsum, calcium sulfate, which even the fine gypsums, and we found this out from trying to get calcium into carrot crops for violet root rot. It takes a long time, can take up to a year for actual calcium to come through and into the crop. We need to get in a potato crop, we need to get that calcium into that crop at that critical tube initiation timing. CAN, calcium ammonium nitrate, only 5 or 6% calcium, so you're not going to get too much calcium into the crop with that. And on the far left there, obviously calcium nitrate is highly soluble. Both the calcium and the nitrate, being in nitrate form, they're both instantly available when you apply them to the crop. This is the timing, tuber initiation. Not always easy to hit it smack on. Obviously, the best way to find it is to have a dig around in the field. Sometimes it looks very different on the top to what it looks underneath. Each individual plant, as you start digging, tuber initiation is actually when it starts to hook over and starts to boot up. Well, as I say, each individual plant, some of the tubers will be just beyond it, some won't have reached it, and some will be spot on. So try and get as close to that as you possibly can. And what I always say is, if you're going to miss it because of weather or for some other reason, get on a bit sooner rather than a bit later. And it will sit there for a while and then get picked up when that crop reaches tuber initiation. Nitrate nitrogen, as I said before, it's a far kinder way of applying nitrate. All crops, not just potato crops, would prefer nitrogen in nitrate form. With ammonium nitrate type products, it has to go through the nitrification process. It can be slightly acidifying as well, whereas nitrate nitrogen, there's no toxicity. It's quick and efficient, and I say potatoes, like a lot of other crops, they do prefer nitrogen in nitrate form. This one. Yeah, this slide just illustrates really how we get calcium into that tuber. If you look at the red dye, it has to go in through those fine. If you look in the right-hand picture, as you look at the screen, those fine root hairs, it has to enter them, then into the stolon, then into the tuber. You have to get it into that soil mix, that soil solution mix around those root hairs. It won't come down from the leaves. And that slide illustrates it nicely. This is the same thing, basically, just showing you that you have to be in and around that tuber, not as close as you possibly can. You need to get it to the tuber area, then it actually goes into that aerial shoot and then into the tuber itself. It's picked up by those root hairs. So getting it close to that tuber is quite critical as well. So how do we know that we're achieving what we think we're achieving? Well, one of the best ways to do it is to do testing in the field. We do quite a lot of peel analysis at our lab at Pocklington, just to see what sort of levels we're achieving. The sort of levels of 0.15 and 0.2, that's relatively high in the peel. So that gives us an indication of what it's going to be like in the tuber itself, in the heart of the tuber. It's going to be considerably lower, but it does give us an indication of what's going on further in the tuber, bearing in mind that it is incredibly difficult to get calcium right into the heart of the tuber. That's why we start at tuber initiation, so we can start getting calcium into that developing potato. This is the end game, really, the end result, what we're trying to achieve. A lot of the guys out there that are growing potatoes are into the pre-pack premium market. So what you're trying to achieve is a lovely, clean skin, shiny potato. Slice it in half, it's nice and clean, no internal problems. And if you think about it, for the cost of the product, in terms of per hectare, it's probably going to be £90 to £100 per hectare in terms of an application cost. If you put that alongside your general input costs across a potato crop, PCN, seed costs, machinery, etc., that's a relatively low input cost. And if you've got I know yields vary and across the country and varieties, soil types, etc. But let's say, for example, you're growing a 50 tonne per hectare potato crop, and you're getting another £50 a tonne premium for it going into pre-pack or the premium market. That's £2,500, and for a £90 or £100 a tonne input cost as an insurance, then I would say that's money well spent. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. So that just to sort of summarise the last 20 minutes there, then I think it's clear. We started off there just reflecting on the fact that tuber quality, it's associated very much with poor cell quality and poor cell membranes. So we want to really address that and make sure that we give that tuber every chance of having a really good quality cell wall and membrane. So those disorders that we were talking about there, the key nutrients that we highlighted associated with those disorders and the fact that you've got a poor cell wall is calcium, boron, and then potassium. So they're the three nutrients that you really must think about and get right into your program. Do focus on nitrate, nitrogen. That's what the potato prefers. But again, as we mentioned, we want to avoid excess of that because that can have negative impact. So getting the timing right, which is sort of early on in the potato's life, as Tom referred to, and getting it on at that tuber initiation timing with that top dressing. And then, of course, Tom mentioned that we're trying to get calcium into the plant. That's the critical bit here. We're wanting to get it in and around into that tuber. And we know, as was described, that the calcium doesn't come down the plant. It doesn't travel downwards. So we've got to get it up from that tuber, the stolon area. That's where it'll come in and then get into the actual tuber itself. So really do focus on the solubility of the calcium that you're going to be using, because calcium nitrate is clearly the winner when it comes to that. So get that on, get it on, and the timing is critical. So as mentioned, tuber initiation, that's when we're really looking for. So go digging, go looking, get that timing right so that we start to give a nice level of calcium nitrate sitting in and around that stolon at tuber initiation. Then will influence that final quality. So if you want more information on that, then clearly we've got either direct email to us or go onto the website www.yara.co.uk or the yara.ie website, and that there's further information there on products and information in terms of growing potatoes.